Good day and welcome back to another DBZ Dokkan video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at Amond Rasin or Rasin, and we're going to see just how good they are in DBZ Dokkan. So I've got them at 55%. They are Joint Battlefield, Disruption, Amond and Rasin. Obviously a play on Almond and Rasin. They are a planetary destruction lead of 130%. They raise defense 1 turn with a high chance of sealing on their super attack. They have attack and defense of 150% and give planetary destruction category allies key +3 attack and defense of 30%. They give an additional 20% defense and chance of forming a crit of +10% for characters who also belong to the Space Traveling Warriors category. So they're pretty good support from that perspective. They guard all attacks and reduce the damage done by enemies by 20% as the first attacker. And they get an additional attack of 50% and an additional super attack as the second or third attacker in a turn. They get an additional attack and defense of 30% whenever guard is activated. Because they are positional, it's difficult to say that there's one true build, but for me they're predominantly a first slot unit because they do rely on getting hit, but only 5 times. You could give them a little bit of evasion if you want to, but for me primarily I would probably just give them additionals, as this will mainly boost their defensive performance with a little bit of crit. I know it's not necessarily the best to always go raising defense for additionals, but for me it just felt right for them, since I want them to be able to tank as well as they can after super. Of course, giving them some crit is mandatory because they need crit to be able to do any kind of damage in the hard events. Now pure numbers wise, like pure performance wise, for a 55% unit these guys are pretty good. We're talking around 360k defense with 20% damage reduction and guard. We also are talking about obviously super attacks. So damage wise, 3.6 million, 4 million. That's nothing too crazy. The big thing with these guys is the fact that they're also enabling the rest of the rotation. So although you can look at them and say, okay, hey, they're solid-ish first slot tank at 55%. The big thing is they are also enabling the rest of the rotation. And for Space Traveling Warriors, Terrifying Conquerors teams, there's not a lot of first slot tanks, especially now in the current meta and how hard it hits. You've got maybe AGL Golden Freezer, who does eventually fall off anyway as well, or the actual AGL Golden Freezer that's only a tank. So these guys are really nice in that, especially if you get a couple dupes in them, they are a really strong unit from a performance standpoint. They, if we're looking at a rainbow unit, we're looking at 500, maybe 600k defense. Definitely close to the 500k mark. If they're link level 10, definitely at the 500k mark, because they got a lot of sources of defense with their links, which is very important. Then, you could give them defensive equipment, which I think is also very good. For me, definitely, like overall, when we look at it, they have the capacity to be a good first slot unit for hard content. Like I'm talking super hard content. 500 to 600k defense with guard represents something like roughly a effective defense of like 1.1, 1.2 million. With the 20% damage reduction as well, you are getting a huge reduction in that as well. So take for example if a unit fires a 3 million super. 3 million super fired against a unit with 600k defense. Effectively, that super is getting reduced massively because of the guarding mechanics. So it becomes a 1.5 million super. Then it becomes 900k. Yes, that's still a lot, but then the 900k gets reduced all the way down to 720. And that's, not assuming defensive raises, that's not assuming link leveling, that's not assuming a lot. So these are the kind of guys that can tank, some of the big red zone super attacks. Yes, they'll tank it for 300, 400k, but at a rainbow level, they will be able to tank it. And that's really what you need. Couple that with them giving the other units on the rotation effectively 50% defense, 10% crit, and 30% attack. That's the real metric of these guys. Now link leveling helps them a lot. All of their links progressively age very well with link leveling. For example, Destroy the Universe, 15% defense. Thirst for Conquest, 15% defense. Tough as Nails, another 5% defense, 5% damage reduction. Loyalty, 5% damage reduction. So there's a lot of defense they can gain. Now, activating all of those links is relatively difficult. Linking them up with Turles, not difficult. Thirst for Conquest, not difficult. And that already is 30% defense that you can add on to their already pretty decent defense. So overall, I'd have to say as a unit, probably for me, one of my favorite pairings of units. They're like an improved version of Recruitment Gildo, basically. They're like a slightly higher level Recruitment Gildo if you have them at Rainbow, and that makes them perfectly fine. Recruitment Gildo are still to this day a perfectly fine unit to kind of work alongside Captain Ginyu. These guys are obviously a slightly better variant used to work alongside Turles. I think overall for me, they are definitely a great unit. I personally love using them. They've really helped my Planetary Destruction, Terrifying Conquerors kind of team with handling a lot of the requirements of red zones for tankiness. So especially since there's a lot of great, highly offensive units in Terrifying Conquerors, Planetary Destruction, that have great defense after super, these are the kind of guys that you want to be able to enable those units to sit in their comfortable positions. All in all, a really fun, good unit. Bye.